According to WTTC, World Tourism and Travel Council, Egypt makes about 16 to 17 billion dollars, but other schools of thought say about 22 billion dollars a year from tourism. But over 5 billion is attributed to the Nile. But Egypt has got one level on type of the Nile. We've got the source. The English took 200 years looking for that source. We've got the best rafting opportunities in terms of 1 to 3 days in the world. Do you know why? Because in many rivers around the world, they have high waters for 6 months and extremely low waters for another 6 months. But in Uganda, the Nile, the difference between the highest season and the lowest season of the flow of the Nile is only 1 meter. So it makes you raft the Nile across throughout the year. So there's no place like that. And then you've got the most powerful waterfalls in the world in Uganda, on the Nile. The whole of the Nile struggling to pass through 6 meters, falling 43 meters deep, cascading over an area of about 120 meters long. There's nowhere in the world you find water gushing through a canyon like that. It's actually, it's a bragging right. So when I brag about Uganda, I'm not just bragging about this. So if Egypt makes over $5 billion, $5 billion is about 18 trillion. Our annual budget as a country is 49.2 trillion shillings, right? Out of 49.2 trillion, Uganda can only through taxes raise about 25 trillion. Now, 49.2 trillion, 60% of it is what they call the recurrent costs, where we pay workers. That means as a country, we cannot raise enough taxes to pay just salaries and buy those cars. Then the next 18% is paying interest on loans. Now, just the Nile alone should be able to pay our national budget if we were serious, positioning the Nile. But how do you explain this to leaders?
That's where I was going to come in. Amos, where you've built for me the historical background, how people were serious and market. Where did we get it wrong? Where did all that stop?
I think it's about leadership.
What happened?
I think it's about leadership. And when I say leadership, I'm not just talking about NRM. I'm talking about even opposition. How many times do you hear this discussion, this deep discussion on TV by either opposition or government guys? How many times? Do they understand these figures? Do they even understand Uganda? These are things we need to question ourselves. Of course, should the media also play a big role? If I was listening to you hold Twitter spaces for Uganda Airlines, I was extremely very impressed by how you articulated this. Now I can bet that going forward, you are going to be interviewing people with clear knowledge on how to position this country. I was actually very impressed. So if we can get more of you interviewing leaders with proper background knowledge, then we will succeed. If we don't, we will not succeed. Because leaders act on the sentiments of the population. The population thinking is actually determined by how much the media puts out there. When we talk about the Nile, we've talked about Lake Victoria, the weather, or Woodewin Sea, we take it for granted. If you look at Visa International does research every single year. What factors determine people traveling? Because people use Visa cards for traveling and MasterCard, right? So they're interested to understand what is the reason they are using to use their cards. You get it? Between 34 to 36% every single year say they're traveling because they're looking for good weather. And Uganda has got averagely the best weather in the world. Even when we're crossed by the equator, the lowest point in Uganda is 622 meters high. The highest point is 5,109 meters high. That's Margarita. So where we're sitting here, we have about 1,000 meters. So if we were about, say, 50 meters above sea level with the equator, it would be extremely humid. But we have averagely the best weather in the world, 28 degrees. So the only country in the world that can come close to us is Ecuador, because we lie along the same altitude. So if 36% of the people traveling around the world, let me give you examples. WTTC, the World Tourism and Travel Council, started in Kuala Lumpur last year, September. And they say the projections for this year, earnings from tourism, is going to be $8.9 trillion. By the next 10 years, which is 2032, 2033, the world will be earning about $16 to $17 trillion from tourism. Are we getting that? It's the fastest growing industry in the world. Now, as Uganda, we should be saying, if in this year the world is going to earn 8.9 trillion and we have good weather, our target should just be $5 billion from tourism or $12 billion from tourism. Get it? We've got 53.9% of the population of the mountain gorillas. We've got a mountain ranges called the Rwenzori Ranges. They are among the top 8 most beautiful mountains according to National Geographic in the world, and the only one in Africa actually mentioned. That mountain range called the ranges called the Rwenzoris, have 16 peaks, have 16 mountains. Those 16 mountains, 5 of which are actually among the top 10 highest points on the African continent. 5 on one mountain range. But of course, there's nothing that can describe the challenge that you go through to go to the top, because the most technical mountain on the continent, Kili, you just walk. But how much does Kili make? People that summit Kili about 65,000 a year. When they say summit, it's the people who go to the top. But what about the guys who go lower? So I think you might get over 100,000 people. But I can tell you that last year, how many people climbed the Rwenzoris? There were less than 3,000. But because of the Rwenzori marathon that we're running, the numbers have gone from 2,000 to 7,000. Now, Kilimanjaro, which is famous for only having the highest point, but not as beautiful as the Rwenzoris, still makes Tanzania about $350 million a year. Okay. The Rwenzoris are a $1 billion potential sitting there. If we marketed it, that's what we would earn as a country from only the Rwenzori, $1 billion a year as a country. But we're not serious, of course. You've got the world's largest caldera, mountain caldera, a hole formed out of volcanic activities on a mountain. It's Mount Elgon. World's largest caldera. If you look at the national park, like Chivale National Park, it's 795 square kilometers. It's believed to be the highest, it's believed to be the world capital of primates. That means there's nowhere in the world you find a concentration of primates like you'd find in Chivale National Park. You can do this research and find for yourself. Now, the biggest attraction, of course, it's got about 13 species of primates.
Black and white,
which are
colobus
nocturnal,
monkeys,
the chimpanzees
the
and so on.
chimpanzees.
So 4 are nocturnal and 9 are diurnal. They're active during the day, the nocturnal are active during the night. The garacos and the bush babies, all those are active during the night. So you go to a place like Queen Elizabeth National Park, it's what? About 1,980 square kilometers, according to some schools of thought. That national park has got 660 different species of birds. That's the highest concentration of birds per square kilometer compared to any protected area in the world. It's a bragging right.